All right, welcome to Florida Legacy Club. We're going to be doing a replay of our recent Legacy FNM at PCB Hobby. And to help with commentary tonight, we've got Cole, Ben, and Taylor. So thank you guys and welcome. Cole, I'll
Hey,
turn it
hey,
over to you.
hey, everybody. We're here for another great Legacy FNM. Match one, we've got Oops All Spells on the left against Soul Type Beans on the right. Um, both decks reinvigorated with some of the bannings and some of the changes. Um, one deck very explosive, one deck very grindy. So we'll see how these two decks face off. I
Yeah,
think
I mean, Hoopso spells kind of benefited from nothing happening to it rather than any other specific thing, but it's definitely a very all-in deck, even compared to some other combo decks. It requires very specific hate a lot of the time in Leyline of the Void or counter spells, as opposed to maybe some other methods that other decks use to combat combo, like your surgical extractions, your deafening silences, your damping spheres. Oops can sometimes just be faster or attack on different angles than any of those others. Do you have any context for how Beans has benefited from the recent changes?
Well, we see turn one Tamio, with recent changes being new cards as well as some bannings. Obviously, Tamio in Modern Horizons 3 making a big splash, just like its predecessor. We see Boggart Trawler, another Modern Horizons 3 card, and a Dark Ritual from Oops. And we see Balustrade Spy, one of the two key spells.
Yeah, pass off the spirit guide there. You need 4 total mana, either with Balustrade Spy or Undercity Informer plus activation, but the goal here is to just get your whole yard into get the whole deck into the graveyard, get your Narcomoebas, cast your Dread Returns, cast your um, Cabal Therapies. You're generally a lot stronger after your deck is in your yard against hate than you are before it. And the MDFC lands from Modern Horizons 3 and to a lesser extent Battle for Zendikar make this deck what it is today. It's technically all spells when you dump your deck in your yard here.
Right, utilizing a little more cheeky aspiration of the name, whereas before it did utilize no lands. Now it's got some kind of half all spells, playing off of the serial name. Uh, with the recent bannings, I think that Oops continues to be a consistent part of the metagame despite Reanimator existing. Obviously, we've seen WotC make decisions as to how they want Reanimator to play, but even we see through Force of Will, the perennial gatekeeper card for combo, the deck is able to execute.
Yep. Quick game over here. How do you think they're going to board?
So with Oops All Spells being a graveyard based deck and really pivoting into Goblin Charbelcher being the primary goal, trying to get around that graveyard hate or even the exile based anti graveyard strategies, and being able to pivot into an artifact based strategy against any deck that's going to bring in a wide variety of graveyard hate. Now, we've seen over the last couple years, especially with cards like Ghost Vacuum and the various other Relic of Progenitus variants, that a lot more decks are able to answer it, but the key answers like Surgical and Leyline of Void still seeming to find their way into sideboards.
You can't really play a turn one graveyard hate piece against Oops and expect that to work out for you if they go off on turn one, though. That's why Leyline of the Void is so important for against this deck, where it might not be the most important thing against Storm, for example. Taylor, how do you think Beans would care about this matchup beyond just the obvious siding in Leylines of the Void?
I'm not even so sure that it is obvious that Nick runs Leyline. I don't know his list off the top of my head, but I've played against Nick a number of times um, in local events. I've never seen him run Leyline in this style of deck. He may be on Grafdigger's Cage. I could see that be something that he reaches for.
Let me check
Um,
the list here. It appears as though we don't have Leylines of the Void. We have Surgical Extractions and Ghost Vacuums here for Graveyard Hate. Also, No Rod to stop Lotus Petal.
he could bring
Um,
in Consign,
can bring into
maybe.
Sign. Toss's Oracle as a trigger.
Um, yeah, it's interesting. I've also got to point out, just for posterity, we joked about how we had never had oops in our local meta
Mm-hmm.
recently. And I love
Maybe
that Cody just decides to be like, okay, I'll be that guy.
he's gonna be that guy.
I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna come in and throw the hammer down, throw the gauntlet down.
Like you're certainly allowed to do it. You know, it's a legal thing that you can do.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Props to
And
Cody.
and sometimes you just got to have the stones to sleeve up this all-in combo deck, and be at the mercy of the top of your deck and the top 10 cards. And sometimes you get through there. Sometimes you have the counterspell backup. And I think that as the meta, at least locally, becomes a little more grindy, we see decks like Beans. We see even the online metagame where we see a shift from the banning, and we see that cards like Beans are really coming back with the banning of Sowing Mycospawn and really getting ready to control the Khazad-dûm, which was the perennial frontrunner from the blue-black tempo deck to move Reanimator back into this combo deck as opposed to a tempo deck. But we see how Oops is able to continue to utilize the space and not fold too hard. We'll see how Cody is able to pivot. We talked about Goblin Charbelcher, obviously different options, but we'll see. I think one of the underrated cards in the deck from Oops is definitely utilization of Lotleth Giant for certain matchups.
Right. Um, Definitely the mark of a good combo deck is being able to play through the hate, and Oops is no exception. If you let the game go long enough, they'll draw enough counter spells, they'll draw enough artifact destruction to deal with um, hate pieces that stick on the board, and they'll have alternate angles of attack like the Charbelcher and the Lotleth Giant. We start with the Surveil Land here out of Nick. Binning a Null Rod too slow for today's game.
I can appreciate Cody's approach of just leaving the modal double face cards just face up. You know what it is. I know what it is. I'm here to play Oops. Let's get it
Es-
done.
Especially for this deck. Any other deck, I'd be like, please flip the land. But oops, it's like, look, the game's going to be over in 10 seconds one way or another. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
We're
So
here
we
for
see
a good time, not a long time.
Exactly, exactly. So top lane out of the Oops deck, not bolting in the backside of Boggart Trawler to have access to mana on turn one. This has got to be a sign if you're the blue black or the Sultai player playing the grindy side of the matchup.
Or just no Spirit Guide, right? Tier 2 is probably a lot more common than turn 1. Just use the ritual to get your thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure I know how much of a conclusion you can draw from that, like just like how much information it gives you. Oh, here's the Once Upon a Time.
Yep, that's the first spell played. Let's see what we grab. Oh, it's a Spirit Guide that's more mana.
Okay. I mean, now, thinking I can get into a place where I can play around days or whatever, maybe over there. With a Spirit Guide, it gives you more explosiveness, of course.
I wonder if we'll get to see the Rakshasa's Bargain cast out of the Beans deck. That is the big thing out of this new set. The 3 mana card that, because of the way that 2 bird mana is defined, is technically 6 mana. Um, will only one of it in this Sultai Beans deck, but it definitely does a lot of work if you get set up. Okay, we're getting up to 4 mana here with Spirit Guide Exiles. There's a Charbelcher. And it's consigned.
Pretty clean.
So the Sultai player able to answer the first threat and then follow up with a Thoughtseize. Uh, really trying to get to that point where you can turn the corner as the control deck against the combo deck, where you're able to establish resources while also keeping your opponent in check. We do see a Force of Vigor from the Oops player, but followed up Wasteland really sets them back. So here we see Nick really attacking the opponent while also establishing resources with the draw go from the other side.
Yeah, 2 Balustrade Spies and a Force of Vigor, lots of 4 mana plays, but you get to Thoughtseize their lands against Dewpaw spells. That's an underrated weakness of the deck here. Between the Wasteland and the Thoughtseize, it's going to take a while for Cody to draw his way out of this, I expect.
Yeah, so we see an Orcish Bowmasters in the end step from the Sultai deck, creating a clock while also putting a win condition in play with that Tameo. In this matchup, Tameo being able to flip and plus into that ultimate, being a way of really just winning the game on the spot.
Yeah, it definitely helps. It's going to take a bit to flip the Tameo, I think. And looking at the stuff in the deck here, I would certainly expect Uro or Overlord of the Baelmerc or Murktide to be faster clocks than Cameo ticking up, but we're certainly happy to have the option here, and it doesn't look like Cody's drawing lands anytime soon. Surgicaling Belchers to get that win condition out of the yard,
Mm-hmm.
revealing the hand. Ooh, Dark Ritual. So we're not very far from 4 mana after all. But at this point, Nick has access to a lot more clues and card selection. We're going to need to go off with at least one counter of backup, if not two, if we're the Oops deck here, I'd imagine.
Yes, we did see Wasteland earlier, and having the ability to threaten the mana base from both the hand and in play, unique advantage with this deck. As we look in the list, and we'll see a little bit later, utilization of the Life of the Loam, part of that Uro Rakshas's insight package, letting you rebuy those wastelands and attack from a different angle. One of the things I like about the Sultai deck is its flexibility, and you're able to sort of do different things. But we see a Dark Ritual into an Undercity Informer resolve, and even then, it's a situation of had all
Yeah,
these with
it's a
Stifle.
stifle. It's this alt art stifle here. Um, but yeah, like I was about to point out, you noticed that he actually had 4 mana in his hand and might have been delaying for a counter, but now that the hand is face up, you kind of do have to go for it, and that's the consequence of that.
Absolutely. As I said earlier, when you're playing one of these all-in combo decks like Oops, you live by the top 10, you die by the top 10, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Sequencing being huge for these combo decks. And at this point, Nick is just trying to end the game.
Yeah, you can obviously be patient. It does behoove you to be patient as a combo player sometimes, especially against control after your first thing didn't work or if you believe they might have a counter. But the turn that Cody did go off, Nick only had 1 mana open. Consign being replicatable is actually a big strain on the mid to late game efficacy of like waiting and trying to go off because if you have 4 mana up and you can replicate the consign, you need that many pact of negations or whatever to stop that from working. And we're scooping it up.
Yeah, that was the flip off the brainstorm. I'm writing on the wall there.
So sideboarding into game three, are we going back to basics here? What do we think the Oops player is doing? Are we just kind of rolling with the same amount, or are we making some tech decisions?
I would not often sideboard going into game three as a deck like this, but I generally play other combo decks. How do you feel, Taylor?
Um, you know, I'm thinking that you probably in you saw the Force of Vigors come in game two. I think in game three you probably are going for velocity and taking cards like Force of Vigor out of the
Yeah,
deck. Yeah.
because you expect to go a little bit faster. You expect to be underneath any null rods.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Now it's interesting if you are still gonna be. I think you still are gonna be on Charbelcher. I think threat density matters.
Being able, yeah, threat density and threat diversity matters post board, regardless of whether you're on the play or draw. Again, because like the hate pieces are still going to be there. The extra counter spells, the artifact hate, you
Right.
never know what's going to happen. The graveyard hate, you never know what's coming, and it's pretty much going to stay there in both games.
Makes sense. Both of these guys are really seasoned and skilled players who are going to be understanding the intricacies of these decks in ways that we may not. So, I trust their judgment, and it'll be interesting to see how this game three goes.
Seems as though we're mulliganing to six, which makes sense. All in combo decks especially love to take advantage of the London Mulligan. It's one of the only reasons that these decks are as popular as they are today.
Yep. A revolution in the game.
So we see him put back a mana source and start off a Bogger Trawler, bolting in a Cabal Therapy.
Ooh. What would you think the name would be for Cabal Therapy in the blind? Force of Will. Anything more interesting?
Yeah, I think Force of Will is the play, especially if you're on the play for game three. And the other option, as we see, being surgical extraction, being able to go around the mana requirement, being able to pay for it with 2 life.
Yep. Um,
Strong hand.
you could fire off another Cabal Therapy. Um, after you dump your deck in the yard by sacrificing one of your creatures, but like while you have priority. But surgical extraction is still going to get your Thassa's Oracle if you don't have counterspell backup. So it's definitely something to be aware of. There's also Ghost Vacuum in the hand there. It's an alt art that's difficult to recognize, but that's probably going to come down turn one here if Nick doesn't want to ponder to look for counter magic.
Yeah. The inclusion of Veil of Summer, seemingly out of the sideboard, check the list to confirm. An interesting include. Is this a situation where there's just bad cards that need to come out, and this is at worst a cantrip?
I expect so. Nick frequently complains that his creature removal isn't good enough against me when I play combo decks, but there's cards like Witherbloom Command, which seem like and Murderous Cut, Fatal Push, which seem like they underperform this matchup. Shieldred's Edict. I expect there's more stuff to bring in than out. And if you do have a counter war, Veil of Summer is absolutely not a zero if you go to turn 2 or 3. We are pondering for counter magic.
After a thought seize.
Natsu's hitting balustrades by. We see another Boggart Trawler, a Dark Ritual, Pact of Negation, and Mystery card, seemingly right on the edge of being able to take control of this. Now, having the information from the Cabal Therapy really making the difference here as we resolve this ponder and into that Ghost Vacuum that we talked about earlier.
Yep, so we're just putting more on the stack here, right? It's like, okay, you could counter the surgical, but now there's also the ghost vacuum, right? We're going to get that Thassa's Oracle one way or another. So it really seems like Charbelcher is going to be the way that we win here. And of course, Ghost Vacuum taking out Cabal Therapy, taking off the option to flash back just for free there.
Nick notably missing green mana for this veil, but time he will certainly find it.
Could have fetched for it earlier, but it wasn't necessary then. We really wanted the Thoughtseize turn one, and I think the priorities make a lot of sense.
Oh, I agree. Definitely agree. And now he has this brainstorm. You know, he can shuffle his hand up in response to some kind of hand disruption spell that comes off the top for Cody. So
Hide the goodies.
yeah, exactly.
And right on cue, we see an end step brainstorm trying to resculpt the hand and provide some mystery. What do we think that Cody is hoping for? Do you think he's looking for another Pact of Negation? Obviously, we don't know the 2 mystery cards, but what's going to be the best? What's going to be the best thing for him to find in this situation?
It's not very likely that he has a payoff off of a couple of blind draws here post Thoughtseize. Like he probably kept that Balustrade Spy and it got stripped. So I'd say that he's probably just looking for it. And without green mana, he can't even cast Once Upon a Time to look for one. So um, we have the mana, we have the counter backup. I would assume it's basically just a payoff.
Yeah.
There's Tamio. See a little gesture there. Doesn't seem like the card he was looking for. Passes it back.
A little bit of body language, and we see these critical turns for the Sultai player being the control deck and wanting to be able to develop the board while also maintain permission. I think that's part of what he was looking for with that end step brainstorm, finding a sweet spot, being able to try to resculpt, finding the Misty Rainforest, trying to really make sure we flesh out our mana while utilizing the Surveil lands as well.
Yeah, it's very possible that Nick already has 2+ ways to interact with this combo and is really just capable of being patient. And I would imagine he's sitting pretty comfortable here as he takes this Surveil. Gonna untap with the green mana for the Veil of Summer. And just continue attacking with Tamio, racking up those clues, racking up that value. There we go, we get a clue. Gonna flip the Tamio with Brainstorm.
This is bread and butter at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, applying pressure in non-creature ways, trying to make sure that the combo deck can't find that sweet spot or that choke point to to try to push through or interrupt. Um, Notably, surveilling the days away with three mana sources in play and a known dark ritual. Heads up play by Nick.
Yep. Yeah, what makes Oops a bit more all in than other combo decks is like it really does front load its ability to go off and present threats, unlike some other combo decks which have maybe 8 discard spells as opposed to this one's 4, or lots more cantrips, ipping and drawing to sculpt the hand and go for a backup kill. Cody's left top decking and passing back while Nick can look at 3 to 4 cards a turn.
We have special pricing for them as well. So first we have Natalie Whitecomb, who's here for 11
Tameo
well.
ticking up.
Philip Philip Nesler, Caleb Whitecomb, and Nick
We talk
Robinson.
about the impact of the legacy format and how powerful it can
Thank you
be,
guys for
but
participating with us.
we really, when we think about these modern Horizon sets and their impact on the legacy format, I mean, it kind of goes without saying what changes we've seen as because of it. I mean,
As well as we
the
need
Did you
key
notice what he
example,
grabbed there?
season
Sorry.
champion Nick Robinson
Thoughtseize.
to
Yeah.
Nick
yeah.
Robinson,
Cameo tick down,
for
gets
the
Thoughtseize.
first
Continue with
place
Modern Horizons 3.
win.
Well, just being able to
Just a
uh,
moment.
give the Oops deck more firepower while also giving the grindy decks cards like Tameo and even in other formats, some of the other small planeswalkers like Ral
Nick
or
Robinson
Ajani,
got to
being able to
receive
land the
a
Snow Rod
warning.
and hit the Thassa's Oracle with the 1-2 punch of Thoughtseize and Ghost Vacuum.
Tickets. So
Um,
that he received.
this is
Now
going
there
to be
may
an
be a
uphill battle.
second copy. There is one in the sideboard that could have come in, and I would expect that if you expect Graveyard Hate. But if it's not, then that's pretty much lights out for the Graveyard Dump plan.
So to begin the evening, I want to ask my
Yeah, I mean
commander league, what
the new
order would
sets
you
have
like
just
me to
totally
do
revolutionized the
for
game.
prizing?
Modern Horizon
So I
sets,
have
can't say that enough.
the
Commander
small prizing,
sets.
which is
Commander
$100
sets,
for
all
credit,
of it.
50 and 25. I would like to do those first. That gives
I think
everyone
we
a
see a
chance
draw from
to get
Cody
those
hitting that
store
Lawleth
credits that
Giant.
have
So kind of
donations
finding
or
the
affluence.
pieces you don't want,
Yes.
while the soul type player
So first,
Nick
we're gonna do
finding
$100
a
in store
clock
credit.
in a fully leveled
Do
up
I have anyone that is
Murktide region.
Murktide. Yeah, he's decided he wants the game to end. We're gonna swing with this thing a few times. Cody has some of these Zendikar lands do have to come into play tap. That is the one Zendikar land that doesn't, so he's still just not ready to go off here. All right,
I know you hate all of us
Murktide
equally.
in. Tameo probably just gonna pick up another Thoughtseize. Yeah, it's lights out. There we go. That thus ends our first match.
All right, I'll jump in here for a quick channel plug. You're watching Florida Legacy Club. This was our local Legacy FNM we do every couple of weeks at PCB Hobby here in Panama City, Florida. For those watching later on YouTube or Twitch, if you look in the video comment, you'll see a link for our link tree, which includes Twitter, Discord, Moxfield, all that good stuff. And again, huge thank you to Ben, Taylor, and Cole for our commentary. We'll move on to round 2.
Let's do it. Always glad to support the Legacy Club. Moving into round 2, our matchup is seemingly classic Reanimator, quote unquote, versus 4-color Beans, notably non-Yorion version. And that's going to be Chris on Reanimator with Jason on 4-color Beans. Started calling Jason Beans colloquially because of his full commitment to going up the beanstalk.
The stubborn bean player.
I mean, Beans is a messed up card. It's gonna get banned in everything eventually, I feel. But like, they had to push this card for a standard limited format where you have to cast your 5 drops fairly, so it gave you the card back so you wouldn't feel sad. But that's just enough to make it the premier legacy engine that everyone wanted it to be.
I'm here for it. I love the card. Um, I've won a lot of games with the card,
Mm-hmm.
and if it gets banned, I'll be sad.
It's true.
But we've got Jason, who's a very seasoned player with the deck, a true archetype specialist. So it's going to be fun to see how this goes down because I mean this could be 2019, 2018 Legacy
Yeah.
4-color control deck versus a reanimator deck.
Right, and when we say classic reanimator, we mean we're not trying to play something like an Orcish Bowmasters or a Psychic Frog. To get in there, we're not reanimating Troll of Khazad-dûm. We are putting a huge monster in the graveyard like Atraxa or Grizzlebrand, and we're reanimating the monster, and we are saying, that's good enough. Please concede. Like,
While
Looking at
also
the
utilizing key pieces like Unmask, which notably absent being traded out for in the tempo version of the Reanimator deck with Force of Will and Daze. Kind of a back to basics approach. Not exactly back to basics the enchantment, but utilizing the hand disruption both offensively and quote unquote defensively, targeting yourself, of course, with Unmask or any of the hand disruption.
right, and we were happy to run Grief as well, and the Tempo Shells even were happy to run that before that got banned. But yeah, like you said, 2018, 2019 Reanimator loves running on Mask, and we get a Faithless Looting out here off of a Lotus Petal to start things off.
Tiffany Grizz versus Luke Grizz.
Classic draw two, discard two, try and get something in the yard, and card select for your reanimation spells and unmasks and the like.
It's not good. Did I not put enough land in the deck?
I think I heard these players mention Heart of the Cards earlier, so it sounds like this mulligan to 5 is a little dire for the Reanimator player. But we do
And
see
they,
an Archon of the Yard.
yep, they do often have to mulligan to get this. Like a full 7 card hand of like unmasked black card plus mana plus entomb plus reanimate plus monster, or not entomb plus reanimate plus monster, plus like self discard plus monster plus reanimate, or just entomb plus reanimate. It's very very card intensive, and though you have to mulligan a lot to get the full combo assembled, you're often down cards and resiliency when you do so.
No. Get out of town. Get out of town.
And right on time, we see the Badlands off the top with Jason's own reaction of no, you didn't. So the Reanimator player is seemingly back in it. We'll see what the follow up is.
More looting. That's a pretty good follow up.
They unbanned this one in Modern.
Didn't do anything.
Yeah. uh,
I think that one died for Hogaxons.
Yeah, Faithless Looting really provided a lot of options in the late teens for the modern format. Cards like Hogak, decks like Hollow One, and even some other tempo shells. But here we see an Exhume and a Thoughtseize providing that Faithless Looting providing that filtration to be able to find key pieces.
Yep, we already have a monster in the yard. We don't need a second one, so we're just hoping to untap, play another land, and cast a 2-mana reanimation spell or a 1-mana one with Thoughtseize or something. We did discard a Thoughtseize, which shows me that we're kind of ready. Brainstorm being cast in the end step. Jason scrambling.
Putting the heat on him. I wish so badly that there was a Sire of Insanity in this deck list. I have such a soft spot for that card. It's just filthy. It's awful.
I don't even remember what it does, if I'm being honest. I haven't seen it in today's Legacy.
4 black red. I think it's a demon that says it's a 6/4 or something like that. And at the beginning of each end step, each player discards their hand.
The beans! The beans is out. Yeah, alright. This is sort of what you expect. We're trying to find a counterspell or maybe draw cards off of our first counterspells that we're casting. Here we go. No Thoughtseize. Raw dogging it.
Thoughtseize, just no land, just throw out this reanimate, make you deal with it. Kind of a power play if it resolves.
I would like a big fatty. It happens.
Yep, it's in. We're discarding the Uro. We lose some life. Gain it back up to the Archon trigger. Maybe not.
Pretty good.
Oh, there we go.
Here we go.
Not expect.
And this isn't lights out because,
No,
this is not Bristlebrand or Atraxa, which draws you a million cards. Archon is more of a clock against other kinds of decks, and Jason is well known for running Swords to Plowshares in the full set, Terminus, Leyline Binding. We've got answers to this, so we'll see what happens.
You're good.
Jason's never scared.
Surveilling to the top before passing back. Yeah, seeing the white mana for the inevitable swords or leyline binding. Uh, Jason probably still in the driver's seat unless our reanimator player can find any kind of hand disruption to interrupt. But even at this point, some hand disruption would just be met by instant speed interaction.
Yeah, but we went off without a counterspell to back it up earlier. It's very possible that by flashbacking these lootings in the mid game, a reanimator player can set up another monster. I really wouldn't be surprised.
So I'm gonna go grab an island.
Yeah, I think Grizzlebrand is the real prize here.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
Grizzlebrand lets you draw those unmasks right away, use them, gain the life back, like pretty much instantly wins the game. Atraxa's pretty close though. That's picking up 5 to 6 cards most of the time.
There are whiff scenarios, quote unquote whiff,
Yeah.
with Atraxa, but
And then I'm gonna pass.
yeah, Grizzlebrand's the more consistent and just obvious way to close the door. But we're looking for more monsters. Point stance.
Yeah.
So we see Jason use Lorien revealed to go find a Xander's Lounge to turn on the leyline binding,
Yep.
which allows him to get into a point where he's able to replace the card, answer the monster. We'll see how the Reanimator player responds. But
At instant speed, unlikely.
Targeting enchantment.
This is better than swords. Yeah, this is great for Jason.
It goes under here.
Swords to Plowshares plus however many cards you want to draw, however many beans you get in there. The old swords plus ancestral recall.
Why not?
Jason notably getting Xander's Lounge, which is, of course, a island off the island cycling, but also a mountain and a swamp to allow for the full discount for casting leyline binding. But here we see a Thoughtseize from the Reanimator player, and players are talking a little bit about sequencing. Like we said, the flash interaction kind of makes casting Thoughtseize first moot, but being able to get that full information while you make decisions on your turn is key. Thoughtseize has been a key card since its introduction in Lorwyn.
Stack up your beanstalks.
Yep.
This is interesting. Taking Tamio over the beans. I don't know about that. I can see an argument either way. You're kind of gonna die to either one.
Yeah, we're basically saying that, okay, you don't have any more beans payoffs in your hand. You don't have anything that costs 5. So you can cycle this beans, and that'll be like cracking a clear for Tamio. And if I just get 1 to 2 more turns, maybe that'll be enough. But with Tamio, I guess we get a couple of clues,
It's a
we flip the
blocker.
Tamio, we start buying back things like Brainstorm, and then you're just well shut out of the game.
It makes sense. Any, yeah. Here's a rumble.
With a rumble!
Any 5-minute spell is gonna break it open now, though.
Yeah, especially now that we found Rumble. And even then, like, Mystic Sanctuary coming up off of this fetch land could pop Lorien revealed and draw 5 cards. That's just lights out, too.
Yeah.
The inevitability of this deck is just real cool.
Put a permanent card from among them in my hand.
Rumble's interesting inclusion, though. It was not in previous iterations of Jason's lists. Being able to find a permanent is nice because it gets you Beanstalk or Leyline Binding, or in the case of some lists, some kind of Planeswalker payoff, which doesn't seem to be here. It's more Fourth Aerolingus is the classic. But, even getting lands, other kinds of permanents, always useful. Get an Uro right in the graveyard instead of in your hand, right where it needs to be. That kind of thing.
We need a Minsc and Boo in here. Why not?
Don't tempt me with a good time, Taylor.
It doesn't trigger.
Where's the comment? That's
It doesn't trigger beans. Minsc and Boo doesn't trigger beans, unfortunately.
It does not trigger beans, but it also draws a lot of cards.
That's true. That's true. Flinging hamsters is definitely a good way of drawing some cards.
How many cards do you have to draw before you become an honorary beanstalk payoff, right? Like 5 cards, 6 cards.
The other potential include that I was mentioning to Jason that kind of pairs with Rumble nicely is Sylvan Library.
Looks like a dark ritual off of the Reanimator side.
Yep.
Yeah.
3 mana floating.
Don't recognize that art for dark ritual.
Flashback.
Yeah, that's a good play.
That dice is certainly telling. Yep, we're gonna
Spin to win, baby.
fire off a Faithless Looting. This is really a Hail
Huh?
Mary. This is probably like a reanimation spell in hand, or a hope to get both a reanimation spell and a monster, because we're going to be left with 1 card after this.
Discard 2.
Yeah.
You don't
Is
look
that
too
Cold
happy.
Snap?
Cold Snap didn't have Dark Ritual.
Oh, you're right.
Grizzle Brand.
Would be like an Ice Age style.
Also
Because
discard.
I mean, they printed this in like every set for the first 7 years of the game. It was
I say,
Yeah,
Jason.
you gotta finish resolving that before you cast Entomb.
Going back to the Malevolent Rumble, a key card to include, I think maybe only 1 or 2 in the list, but we see a Swords, a Wrath the Skies, and can't quite make up that last card, but we see some key interaction get put in the yard to fuel the Uro that Jason pitched to the Archon earlier on in the game.
I think the last card is a Force Negation, but I could be wrong.
any insight, Jason?
Dark Red, Dark Flat. I don't remember honestly. It might be a force negation.
Part of the card spell.
Oh,
Good eye,
didn't
Taylor.
believe hard enough.
What it is going to be is food for Uro, inevitably, but we'll see.
I don't work Fridays.
Yeah, we're just seeing a pass by the Reanimator player. Here we go. This is the time to turn the corner for Jason. Any kind of key interaction, even escaping Uro, puts him far ahead.
Land for turn.
I'd say the corner's already been turned once this attempt to reanimate another monster failed. That this is what you have to go for as a reanimator player. This is your last chance, your last chance to get something out there. So I respect the hustle here, but
Fetch.
it's I don't think Jason's gonna have a tough time finding ways to get lots and lots of cards out of his cards.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab this
So we think back to the
special
Tameo
item left
versus
with
up the
something on top
Beanstalk
of my graveyard.
conversation that we talked
I'm
about,
gonna put
and
force
really
negation back on top of my
it kind of could go either way, but not being able to put something in play immediately after and provide pressure against the Beans player allows for all of this flexibility. And here we see a third copy of Beans off of the Mystic Sanctuary to get back the Force of Negation.
And one more Faithless Looting, so I've got nowhere to go with that one.
Well, I mean,
Shows the reanimate, says, I'm done here, this is never resolving. No other monster in the graveyard.
the most.
You could reanimate Jason's Uro, but you're not gonna like what happens when you do.
Second art.
Yeah.
Okay, but a 0-1 is not a clock.
Yeah.
Literally has no power.
That's right. So we move into sideboard, and looking at the Reanimator players list, we see 2 Dothy Voidwalker, a Fairy Macabre, a Fatal Push, 2 copies of Magus of the Moon, 2 copies of Serenity, 4 copies of Show and Tell, 2 Snuff Out, and a Wear Tear. Magus of the Moon seemingly being the first pick if we're drafting sideboard options in this matchup.
I would not be very confident that Magus of the Moon is going to do a lot of work here. I would imagine that's more for your 2 mana land matchups like your Eldrazi's and the like. There's lots of ways to remove Magus of the Moon from the Bean player side. Show and Tell seems like a likely pivot if you care about graveyard hate, because you can just it's one less thing you have to do to get the monster in play, but like you're really going to focus on your discard effects to try and get counter magic out of the hand, and then just like try and get the show and tell out there. The texture of this matchup seems a little bit dicey for the reanimator player in general.
You know, and I think there's an interesting argument, maybe on the draw for Serenity.
Yeah, I was looking at that. It's like, hey, maybe you pop all the beanstalk, you get that leyline and binding out of there.
Yeah. Just, I'll take out your 3 best things. Get my guy back, get your draw engine offline. It's pretty good. We'll see. It's interesting because it slows you down inherently. So you kind of have to ask, like, is it this? Is that the kind of game I want to play?
It's like every card matters, right? Like I've been talking about. If you find yourself mulling to 4 or 5 and you see a Serenity in your hand, like you don't
Right.
expect this to get played. You expect it to get bottomed.
Right.
YOLO. I'm just a TCG
So
casual.
we'll see.
Wear Tear may be a little less extreme version of this, where you can pop a leyline binding without worrying about beanstalks.
Or like a cage, or like a vacuum, whatever.
Speaking of which, what hate do we have from the bean player side?
We do have a ghost vacuum.
We do have a ghost vacuum. We have some consigns for some triggers, like Atraxa triggers, but that seems weak. We have Veil of Summer for discard and counter wars. That's probably
Mid.
at least reasonable enough to include. Like, you get Thoughtseized, you kind of like you're happy to draw your card back.
Is there any game to bringing in the second copy of Terminus with all of the manipulation from either Mystic Sanctuary or Brainstorm?
You're definitely bringing in Fairy Macabre. Terminus is fine for those reasons, but it's less good against Grizzlebrand specifically because your damage is already done. You're drawing all the cards. But, I mean, Archon's in the deck too. Lots of ways that Terminus could still work.
And if you, I don't know, if you predict some kind of juke where you're like, oh, is he bringing in Beargoyfs or Bowmasters or something like that,
Right.
then you would bring it in maybe in a game 3 situation.
But, like, the other thing is, you look at this list, it's kind of all rolled up. Like,
Right.
you could take out something like Tameo because, like, you don't really need it, like, when it's compared to other clocks. But, like, you wouldn't even want to. I'm just not even sure what in this list you care. Wrath of the Skies, like, that's an underperformer. That's not doing much.
Yeah. We see a mulligan to 5 from the Beans player and a mulligan to 6 from the Reanimator player, if I'm reading this correctly. So we'll see how these games are able to play out as we move into the first sideboard game.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm struggling to see how Jason's going to get pressured here. He knows how to he knows how to mulligan to a hand that can at least beat some amount of interaction. And the Reanimator players, they can have starts that are truly explosive, right? The discard or double discard into go off thing really feels unlosable when that happens. But there are few decks set up to take advantage that are better than Beans.
So no turn 1 plays from either player, but we do see the Reanimator player finding their second land. And we'll see if they're able to take any game actions this turn that will put anything in play. Last turn really last game rather, leaning a lot on this card selection of Faithless Looting. And as the player kind of fingers through their deck, we do see a copy of Serenity as well as a Magus of the Moon or two. So it looks like that's what they've gone. They haven't gone a full juke, but they've opted for some additional ways of interacting with Jason's engine.
Oh, now that's cute. The main phase Surveil. What if the monster's on top?
That's right.
Some percentage of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tells us he's got a reanimation spell ready to go. Like 2 mana is a pretty dangerous amount. You can unmask and then reanimate something if you find a way to discard it.
Did we hit? Wait.
It went into the hand.
I'm gonna troll with it.
Surveil lands aren't that good.
Drew one of my
Right.
cards.
Not yet. You just wait. Give it a couple
Mod
more
Horizon
years.
4.
Yeah, the downside is it comes in tapped, but the upside is you draw a card.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll
No
come in
problem.
tapped with a stun counter on it. You surveil, but then when you remove the stun counter, you draw a card. that's what it'll be in Modern Horizons 4 or 5.
Someone hire this man.
Yeah.
Get you to Seattle.
Surveil trigger.
More surveilling going on the other side.
So is it just sort of a recency bias where we see a lot of these newer sets having cards that are making a splash in the legacy format? Talking about the surveil lands, we'll exclude the Horizons and supplemental sets for now, but even cards in standard, like the Return to Eldraine, Murders at Karlov Manor, and even Duskmourn with some key pieces as well. knowing that Wizards doesn't design for eternal formats, is it a net good or a net bad that we're seeing more standard cards bleed their way into Legacy?
It really depends. I see something like beans or in modern Agatha Soul Cauldron as relatively organic inclusions, as much as I can like make fun of beans, right? This is a card which isn't necessarily broken in standard, we'll see about that. But like is like it has a unique aspect to legacy that people maybe didn't consider. And then surveillance, it's like, yes, you print a land like this, it's going to affect how fetch lands operate because it has the land types. Um, but like in general, some of this also just comes from the way that they're designing creatures and payoffs in general. Fire design really affects how people see cards and enjoy the game, and it affects design because you don't want your stuff to get removed in Commander. You have like 3 turns of passing before it comes back to you, and
So
there
we're going to
comes
see a
back.
sequence here where, because we are playing in a casual event, we're going to see a little bit of teaching here from Jason. So good guy Jason just totally counters the haymaker against him and is explaining to the Reanimator player that if you have disruption, you always do hand disruption first. So we're going to rewind a little bit and we're going to see the unmask.
Right, this is kind of the point of your hand disruption. Like, you really want to get the counters out of the way.
Okay. Yeah. We're finding out what's in the hand, and it's still pretty good. He has a binding, and it looks like the lounge is in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And this is heads up because I was talking about how easy it is to remove Magus of the Moon, but you generally do that by floating the correct color mana in response to Magus of the Moon
Right.
being cast. Jason's had to tap out for the Beanstalk here. It's a critical vulnerability turn for this deck, and on turn
Totally.
3, you can play the Magus of the Moon unfettered.
Yep.
Jason
Now,
laughing said, "This kills me." So he gets to untap his non-basic mountains.
I'm on 10, yeah.
Xander's Lounge coming in untapped, baby. There's a silver lining for everything.
So good.
now we're in the basic planes waiting room.
I'll move to combat.
Tough times.
Yeah. And not the fastest clock, but still a clock. Reanimator player noting unfamiliarity with Magus the Moon being a creature, probably thinking of it as its card cousin, Blood Moon. But we'll see how they're able to follow up, seemingly in the driver's seat, as the greedy mana base punished by this moon effect.
This is another scenario where having multiple copies of Lorien revealed is pretty nice. I like that deck building include. We'll see if it comes up.
I expect Jason to fetch around this more aggressively now that he knows about this as well. This is the kind of sideboard juke you do when they don't see it coming.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to.
We're prioritizing basic planes in a very intense way in Game 3, I assume. Here's therapy.
Yep. What's the name here? We know Force of Negation's in the hand.
Yeah, I think you take the known card.
Show my hand.
So
Oh.
they've targeted
Themselves.
targets himself with Cabal Therapy and gets in with the Magus to keeping the pressure on. We see double Animate Dead Unmask in the Reanimator player's hand, just hoping that
You let me roll back.
Jason is not able to find any basic lands to cast some of the spells in his hand. Specifically, like Taylor said, basic planes.
Untap.
And I was wondering why not go off then, but then I realized we don't have 2 black here. The Magus of the Moon is locking down his own lands, so he can't go for the Animate Dead on the same turn as he goes for the discard here. Probably should unmask first. Yeah, that's the second time we need to learn this lesson, I guess.
That's a good point.
We're drawing a card.
And yeah, probably the most ideal play being unmasking, pitching your extra Animate Dead or your unknown card. But the Reanimator players seemingly taking their time, trying to beat through some of the interaction to make it harder for the next threat to be answered, because the Grizzlebrand is still in the graveyard.
Yep. The second Animate Dead does actually work, so unmask and pitching Animate Dead and just casting the second Animate Dead does the same work of getting counter spells out of the way here. The only difference being that with Up the Beanstalk in play, that first counter spell is drawing Jason more cards to get more counter spells. And
Told you I put some troll things in.
Concession here.
yep.
we go. Magus of the Moon coming through and attacking that greedy mana base. All right, so game 3. Do we see a juke? Do we see, we talked about sideboarding and the approach to the matchup. As the Beans player, once you see Magus, other than the sort of decision-making changes, do you think you make any deck changes? Maybe a Blue Blast or something else?
Blue Blast is one that I was thinking about earlier. It's narrow. I mean, it hits looting, but looting is a flashback spell, so it's not great economy there.
You were talking about how Lorien Revealed lets you get islands, and having Blue Blast opens you up to having this post Magus of the Moon destruction that is maybe a bit more likely than drawing basic planes. But again, I'm just wondering what you cut out of this deck. You're just so rolled up as the Beans player. I'm finding it difficult to even sideboard.
I agree. I think you're cutting the Wrath, maybe the Rumble.
Maybe keep one Tameo, but
yeah,
even then, it's
hard to
tough.
say.
It is tough. Beans, very potent, even in the situation where you're under the Moon effect, as we saw in game 2, being able to use Force of Will as a cantrip. Very potent.
Yeah. And he has Fairy Macabre. You can use that under a moon.
Yep. Buy yourself a lot of time that way. Hey, I mean, even if you just stick like a monster like a Murktide Regent before a Moon Effect, it's going to take a while for the Reanimator player to find a way to get around that, Not any removal in this deck, for sure.
Yeah, Snuff Out's not getting brought in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, we see, as in round 1, where we have the player on the left in an all-in combo deck doing things a little bit differently with the graveyard, but still utilizing the graveyard as an extension of the hand.
Jason Mulligan to 5, which is a little nasty.
That's tough. Yeah.
Not great on the play, but starting off with flooded Strand to lean on that decision making, knowing that the opponent has some kind of moon effect. Probably not pivoting off, considering the mana base that they've shown in game 1.
Yep. So here's where the discard effects get really, really nasty from the Reanimator player, right? If your opponent is mulligan to 5, they are not able to defend against this properly. You unmask them once or twice, there's no way they have enough counter magic to stop a good draw from your end.
And I mean, can you imagine if you were to pair Unmask with Therapy in a situation like this? Could just be lights out.
Or even in the pre-ban days, the old Grief Reanimate. Double get them. Really fun times in Legacy.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah.
Love that.
This was Modern too. This was just everywhere, man. And now it's gone from everywhere.
That's right.
It's like that good guy Cody moment when he's like griefed me 4 times in one game, and I'm like, okay, I'm on Tess, and you've griefed me 4 times, so I can't win.
Mm-hmm. Faithless Looting getting resolved.
This is what you want, a good setup turn.
So if we're not able to find disruption on the Reanimator side, are we looking to go a little slower to be able to maybe put 2 threats in the yard, or are we still going as fast as we possibly can, trying to reanimate something as quickly as possible?
2 threats in the yard is kind of sketchy because most of the hate being represented here doesn't really care about that. Your reanimation spells target, and most of the hate's instant speed. But you are fairly certain that if the Beans player has gone to 5, that they've kept at least 1 counter spell. I would not go off without disruption here.
Agreed.
And then I'll respond after you get that.
Oh no! Don't tell me that.
Unmask.
So being able,
Don't tell me that.
Sorry, he fetches in response to Unmask, probably to hide stuff with Brainstorm. Yeah, we're hiding the goodies. Continue on.
I'm not really.
1, 2, 3.
Gotta keep you on your toes.
I will put back.
so obviously not knowing Jason's hand here, Jason has to present something a hand that is innocuous, and kind of cross his fingers and hope that the game doesn't end on the spot.
I think it's brainstorm.
And you hate to see it. You look at a hand of three cantrips with an unmask, and you're like, "Wow, I feel buried. I can't get the counter spells." And this is a reason, as the combo player, to use your discard effects on the turn that you want to combo, and a reason as the control player to bring in Veil of Summer, because if this is the implication, you are actually time walking them with Veil of Summer. But like, it's often that you'll Thoughtseize them, and then they'll brainstorm to hide the goodies. But then it's like, hey, they don't have Force Wills in their hand right now. I can play my Grizzlebrand.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping.
So highest card reward. So left with
Force of will.
an Island, Ponder, Brainstorm. And let's see if the Reanimator player follows up before passing back. No play. I see another setup turn on the way with the Ponder being shown by Jason.
We know what one of those cards is, and if it was bad, he can shuffle it away here, but it's kept on top and drawn, like the other two as well.
Look at that. Something that can't be a mountain.
That's Ghost Vacuum. Yep, that was probably hidden as well. Probably, I would guess it was like a counter spell, like a Force of Will or Negation, and the Ghost Vacuum, just to stop that. And now, any reanimation threat has to get through this Ghost Vacuum, and it dodged the discard. They've got nothing to deal with it except for the Serenity.
Yep. This is a tough spot.
And you can play this instant, right?
I can tap it at instant speed, yes.
And this is why I think show and tell is a nice plan.
Yeah, we haven't seen one yet, but
That's what we're looking for.
yeah.
I think that's the out here.
Yes.
I assume it's in the deck.
I mean, yeah, I assume so as well.
But I have to.
Yeah, we do have this one Underground Sea that we can fetch for to get it, and our 4 Lotus Petals to cast it, so it's a little harder than usual, but...
We do see Serenity still in the deck as we fetch, probably for another source.
Scrub land, yeah. We're hoping to get Serenity out there.
Sure.
Did you bring in Serenity?
I think that's a signal. I think if we were hoping to show and tell here, we would fetch Underground Sea, which we saw scroll through the deck as well.
No doubt.
Serenity in the year of our Lord 20.
Either the Serenities are in hand, or it's what he believes will be the most effective way to proceed forward.
I just work
I don't
here.
even know what Serenity does.
Only getting glimpses at the hand. I think we saw a copy of Dark Ritual, maybe a Lotus Petal. Based on the fetch, we'll see what the follow-up play is, but I think that we're kind of missing a key piece, or maybe two, from the Reanimator player to be able to commit anything to the yard. And the Ghost Vacuum hitting the flashback spell, Faithless Looting, immediately in the first activation.
Yep.
I was kind of reserving that for later.
Brainstorm.
Gosh, imagine Ghost Vacuum sniping, getting yourself a 1/1 Atraxa or Gristlebrand off of the activation. That's just lights out, if it wasn't already.
Yeah.
That's the dream.
Making a 1/1 that draws you, anywhere from 3 to 7 cards is pretty good. So not a bad 1/1. Worth the 6 mana to make it, but it's pretty decent.
Brainstorm again.
Go. Oh, I'm sorry. Land for turn. It's just
Yeah, get the fetch land. I was like, oh, we got the land. We do have land. We're gonna fetch, get those bad cards out of here. Jason, notably because of the Moldify, still only at 2 cards in hand, but has really gone through a lot of effort to filter the card quality here. So we expect at least a counter spell and another cantrip, at least, or something like a Leyline Binding.
bad. Untap. Draw.
Yeah, and Leyline Binding is the type of card that can punish the delayed effect on Serenity, notably.
Yep.
There's some value in go ahead and use.
Because you have a way to exile the enchantment
No, you're not drawing.
with your own enchantment, that could come up.
Ballistic Plains and
You
the
learned.
battlefield.
Not until you got your bean.
Not losing a
Bananas
Magus.
There's one of them.
Not losing a Magus.
That's a beanstalk. Considering you drew from it, it can't see from the glare, but I can't think of anything else that would be.
I think the Up the Beanstalk would be the only card that Jason would slam down as fervently as he did, leaving up the basic planes to be able to answer some kind of monster. But just to pass back, Now, Jason's going after the other cards in the graveyard, other than just maintaining the muscle memory of activating Ghost Vacuum on your opponent's turn. Is there some kind of selection that Jason can use to maximize what he's exiling, or is this just the muscle memory?
If you expect Barrowgoyf or Nethergoyf, then you want to get card types out of the graveyard. That's the only thing I can really think of here.
Sure.
Land for turn. Okay. Go.
The tap Mystic Sanctuary, there is a cost to fetching basics. That's one of them.
All right, you're good.
Could have been untapped, but it's very important to protect the integrity of your mana base here. Which fetch land would you like, buddy? Here you go. It's probably been too long for the Reanimator player to really take advantage of Jason's slow start here.
Yeah, we've evened out. The effect of the mulligan to 5, I think, has been eroded at this point in the game. And the Reanimator player looking for the key spell and just not finding it, probably hitting Disruption and not a way to find an answer, or not a way to reanimate it.
I mean, even if you do have it, the Ghost Vacuum's sitting there menacingly, looking at your graveyard, waiting for its chance. Like, you just can't do it anymore. Like, not without multiple cards, or even a card that you may or may not have in there in Show and Tell.
Target me?
Actually,
Yeah, that's there you go. You can put
Unmasked,
two monsters in your
getting cast, and not getting cast.
The best way to
It looked
get
like
around
he
it is
pitched Animate Dead.
Entomb.
Again, trying to read
We're-
the opponent's
thinking
hand.
about
Two things in
things.
the yard in the same turn, basically.
You see more evidence of good guy Jason coaching the Reanimator player with the mechanics of
Yeah,
ideal
that makes sense.
sequencing.
You're gonna have to discard anyway. Target me.
Alright, Unmask, getting cast after all.
I will counter.
Force negation, hard cast.
one of the counters would have been gone.
Yeah,
Nice upside to force negation here.
so
You don't trigger the beans, but the 3 mana does matter a lot, especially in this combo mid game right here.
Thank you. Alright, my turn.
Yeah, eating more
This
types.
is the part.
I mean,
This is the part of the game where it's just Jason waiting for opportunities to point his spells at things that trigger Beanstalk. You know, he's probably sitting on a Leyline Binding, Force of Will, something like that, and he's waiting for a relevant spell that'll just draw him a card.
And we just don't need the clock. I mean, he's sitting here, he's the control player, he's already won the game. Like, we can just draw like 5 to 7 cards and then eventually put down something that wins the game on our own here.
Yeah, we've got a really good piece of disruption. We've got our engine. We're set up.
But you can never be too careful, right? That show and tell could come at any time. 2 discard spells in a show and tell. Like, the reanimating hand's pretty full, and you gotta be on your toes.
Yeah, and Grizzlebrand is in the. It's a way to turn the corner. That's for sure. Reload everything. It's just scary.
Do we think that if Jason was playing the non-beans version, which I know is kind of a ludicrous thought on its own because we know Jason as a person, the ability to use beans to kind of claw back into a game after a mulligan to 4 or 5, that kind of has to add to the sort of base value of the card. Of course, we were talking earlier about the ceiling of being able to cast a free force of will and get one of the cards back, but being able to just cantrip on a turn 2 or a turn 3 to get you one card deeper and undo that mulligan, I think what we're seeing in this game, it pays dividends.
Yep. Your sort of like Esper Stoneblade style control lists might have more main deck removal and a faster clock, but the draw engine here is pretty unbeatable. We'll see what happens with the like Staff of the Storyteller, Corey whatever blade cutter, steel cutter blade list that come out. They might be drawing 2 or 3 cards a turn depending on what's happening, but certainly not for free like Beans is.
Yeah, Corey Steelcutter being another relatively new card, or a brand new card, excuse me, from Tarkir Dragonstorm, making splashes in other constructed formats, showing up in a couple lists in Legacy, but utilizing the 2 spells in 1 turn mechanic to generate tokens with prowess, much like Monastery Mentor, but not able to be fatal pushed.
Thoughtseize hits the board with gusto.
Are you countering?
We're gonna find out.
Let me see your hand, buddy.
No.
Oh no, we're gonna
No, sir.
hard cast the force and draw a card here. We're just trying to get as many cards as possible out of this speed stock as we possibly can.
That's right.
Thoughtseize joins the rest of the graveyard in the ghost vacuum pile.
The ghost vacuum timeout pile.
We call that milking the bean, Ben.
Oh, whoa.
Wow.
Let's just say there's a couple cards I can draw that can
Milk and
significantly
beans.
change.
100%. I mean, I'm
Well, this ghost vacuum is, yeah, it's looking tough. I don't know how you claw your way out of this because you've missed so many land drops. You need the blue mana for the theoretical show and tell that he probably has the counter for anyway. It's grim.
About to draw a lot.
And to point out, like I mentioned how Jason hid the goodies and likely hid the ghost vacuum for a discard spell. This was not the reanimator's player's fault. They couldn't have played around that because,
No.
like, you let Jason untap, and then he gets to play ghost vacuum, and if you don't do and if you do the discard, then the ghost vacuum gets hidden. So you do generally want to save your discards for the combo turn in the case that you want to deal with counter spells. But if you're playing hate pieces, it's difficult to actually reliably get them if your opponent has any mana up and can hide them with Brainstorm.
Didn't draw what I needed.
oh no.
So we see the Beans player putting in a level 5 Murktide being an 8/8. So the clock is in play, and opponent's life total being 16. They have to find something to do, fight through a couple different layers. Notably, the Murktide drew 2 cards, so being an 8/8 while also being a divination, keeping the Beans player ahead. So we're starting off with the Thoughtseize. This is going to be a key turn for the Reanimator player if they can make any actions.
Finally see the hand. It's got Swords, Leyline Binding, Forest, Terminus. Yeah, I mean, Terminus not doing much here, but there's 2 pieces of removal, and that's perfectly fine. No counter spells, though, notably. So if Reanimator player goes, well, second discard effect, Dark Ritual, Lotus Petal Show and Tell. This is a way we get out of this?
Well, yeah, if you. Well, hold, he's taking swords, okay. You wouldn't take the binding though that draws cards, right?
Terminus.
I don't
Which
know.
one do you want?
Binding still costs 2 mana, no swamp. Maybe that's the consideration. It's tough. I mean, I don't think there's a good take here, really.
There's no.
It's grim for the Reanimator player. I do think that.
Oh, he
taking
doesn't
the-
know what Terminus does. It's not in English. I think that's what we're talking about here.
I see.
No, that's one mana.
Some
Crafty taste.
splash damage from having foreign language cards.
Probably want to take.
It's the foreign language alt art cards that get me the most. It's like, oh, I can't read it and I can't recognize it. What fun.
Worse than the other two.
Yes.
Thankfully, Jason doesn't have any of
This hits
those.
you too.
What's that?
This hits you too.
It does.
So we are going with swords.
All right.
Yeah, this is a rock and a hard place kind of scenario. Because you've just got
It will be.
the Murktide just bearing down on you. You've got double beanstalk. I don't know how you get out of this.
Can't Miracle the Terminus, but you sure can hardcast it. Game's gone on long enough.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And we've during the course of the Reanimator player's turn, time did go in the round. So Jason's turn will be turn 1, and Jason fetches the Xander's Lounge to get the full discount on the Leyline Binding. So turn 1, Jason with a 2-turn clock in play and multiple turns to utilize. We'll see how the Reanimator player can fight through this if they can even.
When he enters the battlefield,
Classic
Events,
Jason
Jason.
going to time.
I'm gonna game 3.
I love how Jason goes to time, and the first thing he does is cast Arrow.
It's like, oh, now it's time.
And he
We're gonna draw some cards.
That's the best
Already
time to
gains-
draw Arrow.
Yeah, I'd like to gain some life on the way out.
That Murktide came just in time. It's just like, all right, I hear the clock is about run down. The game is about to end. You need to attack in 2 turns. I got you, buddy.
We build the suspense for the first 50 minutes.
It's theater.
With the little 2 fingers, it's like this Murktide
right.
is getting in there.
Jason is nothing if not a showman.
It is a land.
All right, 8 life, a card full of, a hands full of cards, an opponent with absolutely everything they could need.
Eight life,
Finding hand
notably
number
enough,
3.
to activate Gristleblank.
But not reanimate and activate it.
It's true.
Right, right.
Maybe we can go Rit.
Hard cast Gristleblank.
Yeah.
We don't have the mana
Uh-oh.
for it at this point.
Here's a dark ritual. You might be onto something, Taylor.
We'll see. I've lost to that. I've literally lost to that one before.
There wasn't a counter spell last turn.
Here we go.
Right. 3 mana. Uh-oh.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
yeah.
Uh-oh.
Results?
6 mana. Or
I
5
want to see
mana.
it.
Oh, man, up to 5. Come on.
Hard cast Gristleblank.
Lotus Petal.
We're doing it.
It's enough.
There it is.
Grizzlebrand,
Nice ghost
you can
vacuum.
Hardcast Grizzle?
Go to 1, draw 7 cards.
I love it. This is where we need Children of Corliss in the mix.
There we go. Where's my 10 fins at?
Unfortunately, Murktide just larger than Gristlebrand here.
Yeah.
Attack into it.
Response to the cast.
Yeah,
In
I paid
evidence that
2
there is no
mana and
justice.
drew 2 cards.
Yeah.
And I'll have 3 draw triggers.
No justice.
All right, here comes our Source of Plowshares Ancestral Recall here.
Yeah. So here's an interesting interaction. Grizzlebrand is on the stack, and Jason is responding with Leyline Binding with 3 beans in play.
Even if it didn't have a target, I can still cast it. Because it doesn't target until after it enters.
Okay.
It's just an enchantment.
Oh, Gristlebrand is on the stack.
Yeah, he's on the stack.
Correct.
And in response to the
We're
cast,
trying to counter this with the Ancestral Recall. It's a bold move.
try to draw a counter spell.
But then I can hit his ability before you do yours.
Because you can't even get the Leyline Binding with an Unmasked here off of the Gristlebrand. I think you,
He will
like,
resolve before this
you
one.
can let this resolve and still win most of the time,
And then I can
but
instant hit.
No.
So this is on the stack.
we're taking a bit of a risk
This is
here.
on the stack
He's
on top of it.
casting this
Okay.
Yep.
spell is on the stack. He has 3 triggers.
Yep.
So talking
It
about the
looks like he wants
stack and
I'll draw these.
Jason
and
explaining
then
how he's
this will
utilizing
resolve first,
the-
and it's on the stack.
Okay.
the draw triggers from the beans in order to find a counter spell.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Got the
And I'm
fancy
trying to
hand
draw a counter
motions.
spell, so cast that.
Oh, yeah.
Draw 3.
Yep.
Okay. 1,
Yoink.
2.
Sorry, misunderstood.
Got him. Here come the cards.
Maybe you do this because you already have another removal spell, like a Swords or a Leyline Binding or something.
Now we're back to this on the stack. I'm gonna respond to this again.
Horrible
If
person.
this deck isn't like Tin Fins, this doesn't have like Child of Corliss or whatever. This doesn't really seem to be able to just
Digging for that counter.
win immediately if we draw 7 cards here.
Right.
So-
Jason now casting a Brainstorm with Grizzlebrand still on the stack. So digging a little bit deeper in order to try to give an answer to this.
We must go even further beyond.
That's right.
Grizzlebrand is gonna resolve.
Did we find it?
Result?
Jason announcing that Grizzlebrand resolves. So now the Reanimator player with 8 life has an activation of Grizzlebrand at their disposal. But when do they do it? What do they have in their hand? Can they keep this Grizzlebrand in play?
Might as well.
Actually,
I definitely, since we haven't made a land drop yet.
I think we did play the swamp. I think this
Oh,
was that same
we
turn.
did? Oh, okay.
So we need like multiple petals into an Atraxa, or ideally an Archon.
Yeah, if you get an Archon, you make him sack the Murktide here, and then you have the ability to attack and kill him on turn 4.
So we're gonna draw.
Yeah.
If you can hit Archon,
Yeah, because we're definitely not winning as it stands right now. We don't have the, like, we could just try and draw, right? But I don't know. It always
Right.
feels better to, like, if you can go for the win, you go for the win, right? Like,
Yeah. Yep. Playing to win as opposed to playing to not lose. Big difference. The Jason still has the Ghost Vacuum though, so not a absolute green light. But we do see an Exhume, a Reanimate, at least one Unmask.
I can still exude.
So finding some interaction. Exhuming Uro, probably not the best move, but we'll see. Opponent has a bevy
Yeah,
of cards, and we'll see what they're able to do.
yeah, we need to go off twice because of the Ghost Vacuum, Unmask happening.
Targeting me.
We don't know the targets yet. Probably going to resolve because Gristlebrand resolved.
I haven't played a land this turn either.
Yeah, that resolves.
Very difficult to continue on here.
I do like the line though.
Yeah.
I think this is the right move.
Just
Okay,
self-discard the Atraxa.
Yep.
this
All
makes
right.
sense.
That's cool.
Notably, you can't do that with Grief. Grief had to target the opponent, so that's one advantage to Unmask.
Land for turn.
I think it's safe to unban.
Yeah.
That's
Wait, did we
unfortunate.
not already play the land?
I was unsure about that myself,
Okay.
but that's a fetch land anyway. That's kind of not gonna get
Yeah,
cracked. So,
Take your time.
unless
Fair.
it's to go on your own terms.
that's right.
Fair.
Does he have the lotus petal?
We need to gain some life back before that comes online.
Yeah, we didn't discard Archon here, which would have been the best thing for us, but still reanimating Atraxa here lets us get another bite at the apple to try and do that if we draw really, really well, and even threatens to trade with Murktide instead of just chumping it as Grizzlebrand would.
I do have a lotus petal, but it doesn't do me any good.
Yeah, being at one life's tough.
So we see a second unmask,
Do you target me?
Pitching
pitching a
reanimate.
reanimate.
This goes for
I'll respond. Actually,
So two unmasks this turn, one targeting himself, the other one targeting Jason, and we see
Oh, man.
two leyline bindings,
this is
a Veil of Summer, a Lorien Revealed, and a Tropical Island.
Yeah,
No?
I wouldn't be surprised if the second Leyland Binding was just in his hand the whole time. It's one of the only reasons I might have gone for pre-cast Gristlebrand Leyline Binding.
Yeah.
hey, that's not.
We're going for looting.
Interesting
This is
enough, the
desperation.
Reanimator player having two unmasks and choosing to unmask himself first, and then Jason, with Jason having the removal spell and having two removal spells in hand, which could have been removed by at least one of the unmasks,
but it's fine.
or by both
Yeah,
unmasks. Excuse me.
but you need another monster. The thing is, it's very difficult to talk about the efficacy of any of these lines here when you don't see a way out regardless, right? You're really drawing blind in this situation, and I just don't know what would have worked given what happened. Very well played by both sides, but yeah, gonna go to the Beanstalk player.
More cards.
All right, jumping in here between rounds as we head to our final round in round three. This is Florida Legacy Club. We're watching a replay of our local Legacy FNM that we do every 2 weeks at PCB Hobby in Panama City Beach, Florida. We also have monthly Legacy tournaments that we do. Both events are proxy friendly. We have a monthly coming up this Saturday, so stay tuned for a replay of that event as well. If you're watching this on YouTube later, you can look in the video comments and find our link tree, and that'll take you to our Discord, Twitter, Mox Field for all the deck lists you see here, and as well as our YouTube and Twitch channels. So thanks for hanging out, and again, thanks to our commenters. I will pull up round three.
Destroy it. Yeah. That's the old.
Thank you,
Yeah, our
Jason.
local events are really great. We have good turnout. Great game store. Good to support the LGS. Anyone in the area who tunes in and wants to come, please stop by.
So round number three, we're going to have the return of the Sultai Beans player, Nick, taking on four color beans and Jason. Some bean on beans action, some lima beans versus black-eyed peas.
Absolutely disgusting. This wouldn't stand if I was able to make the event. We've seen enough storm failing on camera, though, over the last few weeks. Let's get the control mirror a time to shine.
If ever there was a round to go to time, we're about to see it.
Well,
That's right.
Nick plays relatively fast,
He
and
does.
Jason isn't slow. It's just he sometimes gets slow opponents and is a moderate speed control player, which is really a death sentence in the Magic community.
Speaking of death sentences, Nick has rolled Snake Eyes. Tough. But yeah, you're right. This should be very grindy. I expect it to be maybe a, kind of who can stick a Tameo type of scenario. Who can stick a Beanstalk and get it to, stay around. Notably, the white mana in Jason's deck means he can remove Beanstalks. whereas Nick is going to struggle to do that.
Yeah, it seems as though like Nick's gonna leverage the card advantage off of Rakshasa Bargain if he ever gets the chance to get it, or cards like Overlord of the Baelmerk if it doesn't get removed. Um, you can, yeah, you can't get binding with that.
Right.
You also have days where Jason doesn't, which can blow out a Beanstalk early. That's a nice one.
So I think the best card that Jason has access to that Nick does not is ley line binding.
Yeah.
And I think the best card that Nick has access to and Jason doesn't is Orchestra Masters.
Oh yeah, can't forget the Orcish Bowmasters. If you saw this in Modern and you see this in Legacy too, like you have to draw the cards with beans. So it's like if you get an Orcish Bowmasters in before the draw card triggers of something like Warrior Revealed or Force of Will or whatever, you can just do a lot of damage. And yeah, maybe they'll be able to swords the guy. Maybe they'll be able to like find some more answers. But it's going to be a lot of pressure on the life total if it's not dealt with.
Oh, absolutely.
So we see a slow couple turns, but a Uro hit off the Surveil land by Jason in 4 color. And we see a Tameo as our first creature in play. Tameo seemingly one of the better creatures not named Orcish Bowmasters. And we see a response of up the Beanstalk.
Yeah, that's a better turn two than Jason's. It needs a Force of Will. Get that beans out of here.
Is Nick playing a Vald?
A what?
Is that what that is? That plains? That's actually a forest?
Yeah,
Um.
I think that's what's going on there.
Oh man. So there's, for context, there is a single planes that, well, it has planes templating in art, but it's got German text forest on all of its text, and so it's ruled as a forest. But it's a really like kind of rude thing to do in tournament play.
I think it's
Very
technically
cheeky.
illegal. I think it's illegal in like Comp REL. I
No,
don't know.
no. The reason this works is Comp REL says this is a forest.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So we see a
Well,
flip Tameo on Jason's side off of a Brainstorm, and Jason seemingly in the driver's seat after countering one of the key spells from Nick.
we'll let this slide, Nick, because we love you.
Mm-hmm.
So this flip Tameo is,
It's an issue.
it's a problem for Nick.
The non-creature permanent removal is basically in this spot Witherbloom command. There's no leyline binding. There's no prismatic ending. Shielder's Edict as well. Yeah, that helps. But that's 3 cards out of this list. It's not that many.
Yeah, we're gonna be depending on. Well,
Nick has played a Shieldred's Edict, difficult to see with the glare, but followed up by a Force of Will protecting the Tameo. Notably, on Jason's turn, he put in a copy of Up the Beanstalk, snuck that in after the Tameo activation.
wow. So we're drawing a card for our trouble. Amazing.
Rakshasa's bargain bend. Nick needs action and not to spin his wheel drawing cards here
Yeah.
on the back foot.
This is really the power of Tameo. It's just so strong.
It's just a take up, take up. It's like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
It's
And
like,
then if you have an answer what you're going to do about it, take down. Go get a counter spell. Go get a removal spell.
right. I think there's this misconception, and always has been, about Legacy from people who don't maybe play the format as often, which is that, oh, the games are always over first 2 turns kind of thing. Or if you play
Yeah.
a game, you maybe don't get a turn. But the reality is, in a lot of decks, you're going to turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, and in certain matchups, you may be going past turn 10.
There's the threat of turn 1 wins, and that affects the texture of the format, but it isn't all it is. Vintage is the same way, by the way, but there are legitimately a lot more blowouts in Vintage than there are in Legacy. But, it's the same thing with any combo matchup. There's just lots of people who that they don't know about the metagame, and they're just, making assumptions based on what they heard or a bad loss that they've had.
So here we see Nick cast Murderous Cut. Yeah, Murderous Cut off Delve for the creature Tameo in response to the clue activation to draw an additional card before Jason's next turn. Planeswalker Tameo up to 6. threatening that ultimate activation, and Nick trying to keep up.
Got three.
Yeah, you got to imagine that Nick's feeling the pressure in this scenario. I mean, we got Tamio at 8 now.
Tamio at 8, and active beans to a no non-active beans. Second beans on the way. Demands a response. Not going to get it likely.
Drawing a
This is
card.
tough. This is highlights the importance of these grindy matchups and finding your spot. Nick's going to have to find a key point in order to break up what Jason's put together. Seeing two Force of Wills, not insignificant, and being able to really turn every big spell into a divination.
Now, there is one back door here. We could get that Orcish Bowmasters in response to the Tamio draw half your deck.
Yep.
If Jason doesn't have a counterspell and doesn't win that fight, he could
Yep.
die.
Yep. Bit of a liability. He's at 16. Get him.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Boom.
Here's an Orcish
there's
Bowmasters.
the threat. There's
Oh,
the
and the
counter.
third Force of Will
Uh,
being pitched. We have two triggers. Uh-oh. We see a fetch. And another copy of Orcish Bowmasters.
In response to the triggers,
Found them both off the
ooh, the way this is even better than a counterspell because this means that Jason doesn't get to look for another counterspell with those beanstalk triggers.
That's right.
Yes. Oh, great sequencing from Nick here. Obviously, having two Bowmasters, a great spot when fighting against looming Tamio activation, but looks like he's finishing off the Tamio
You may
after the
draw,
activation.
Yeah,
Have
he,
I-
he does still get a chance to draw a removal spell rather than a counterspell to deal with that before the Tamio activation happens.
Have have I mentioned Orcish Bowmaster should be banned immediately?
It's just a 1-1.
All right. Can he find an answer?
Yeah.
Two pings at you.
Means what? He only has one white source.
It looks like that ETB finished. Oh, okay. We didn't draw the Tamio cards
no.
yet. The cost was paid, and then he finished off the Tamio with the 1 damage from the ETB Orcish Bowmasters.
I see.
So now we need a removal spell. We didn't have it, and
And
got
Jason,
domed.
wow.
Well
The
played.
second Bowmasters in response to the Tamio activation. Like we were saying earlier, there's in these grindy matchups, there are choke points, and sequencing is so important to be able to find your spot and stick these value spells. We saw early that Nyx up the beanstalk got forced on turn 2, creating this opportunity where Jason could really pull ahead. But even being as far ahead as he was, the utilization of the flash on Orcish Bowmasters keeping Nick in the game.
Yeah, and it's always fun to see those moments that are kind of like, you might call them a deflecting palm sort of moment where you're expecting one player to do the really broken thing. Game's about to be over. Draw half my deck, and Nick has a really good answer. And we talked before this match about the importance of Orcish Bowmaster, and I expect that it's going to do a lot of work in the next 2 games too.
One
Taylor,
wonder.
did you specifically mention Deflecting Palm, my favorite card in Magic the Gathering, on purpose?
Listen, man, I think that card is really underrated, both in constructed and casual, kind of just like EDH scenarios too. It's really fun. It's a great one.
One wonders if Jason was meant to play it more slowly here, but like I said, you don't want to go into that fight with that counterspell, but you do have one. You expect to draw more off of the Beanstalk triggers. It was the specific sequencing of Bowmaster into Bowmaster that made this fight a lot less favored for him. And if you go minus Tamio, pick up a Force of Will, maybe you feel better about that fight. Maybe you have a lot of card advantage, but there's a lot. You're also giving Nick time that he might need to turn the corner. It's a very interesting decision that you have to make in this kind of spot.
Yeah.
How do you sideboard these control matches?
So I think if you're Nick, you're really looking for more power and toughness. So I'm thinking you're going for a Baragoyf. You probably bring in the Harbinger. Thoughtseize
agree.
seems like Thoughtseize seems like a good option. We're trying to look at the hand, just get some information, poke holes here and there, take his beanstalk out, resolve yours first, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think Carpet of Flower is also a secret all-star in this matchup. Most of
no
Jason's
doubt.
mana base being islands by definition, and not really having a way outside of Harbinger to quote unquote turn off the lands allows him to really pull ahead. Even in that situation that we saw where maybe Jason's ahead on resources, Carpet, as it's been doing since its introduction, really punishing blue players for making their land drops.
Oh yeah. And from Jason's side, I'm thinking also, we're looking for Carpet of Flowers. Obviously, we see Wastelands out of Nick's deck. That's a really important piece on both sides, like you just mentioned, Cole. I think also Red Blast could be a great card. We do see some important blue threats, the Tamios, the Murktides, even going after a key Stifle that's kind of going to hit your thing and have some counterplay to that can be good.
Do you want another threat? Do you want the second, fourth?
I don't think I'm going for fourth Aerolingus. I think I would go for Terminus.
Interesting.
I like I like leaning into your control role. You're the deck playing white cards. Play more white cards.
I'm more talking about like the 3 mana fourth where you get a guy in and you become the monarch and you say, what are you gonna do about that?
I think it's too risky when he has a flash threat that makes two bodies.
Yeah, it is pretty
It's
risky in this specific matchup.
Yeah, I think it's a little too tough because he's more threat dense. So if Nick draws a follow up threat and steals the monarch from you, he's keeping it.
Yeah.
Nick does have one main deck copy of Life from the Loam, excuse me, to go with his Wastelands. This is an opportunity where if he's able to assemble the combo of Wasteland plus Life of the Loam, this could potentially lock Jason out of the game. Maybe not as direct as the Magus of the Moon we saw in the last round, but starting off Xander's Lounge can be dangerous.
Yeah, we're getting the Triome under us. Up, yep. There's Wasteland.
And here we go. Starting off with the Wasteland, punishing the mana base,
Oh no,
and no land from Jason back to the Soul type player.
that's
Back to
tough.
Nick.
You're generally
go.
comfortable untapping with your land and casting a brainstorm or a ponder to find more, but Wasteland's a pillar of the format for a reason.
I'm a little surprised then by this keep from Jason. I guess we were really relying on not getting wastelanded. I mean, maybe the rest of the hand is just a lot of interaction, free interaction. Maybe like some Force of Wills. We could see some cheap like Red Blasts or something, and he kept off the strength of having red mana. I don't know.
We do see an Uro he pitched to hand size because of the no land. So I think you're right, Taylor. I think there's a lot more interaction and leaning more on Nick taking those first couple turns to also set up in kind of this pseudo mirror.
And this is the strength of Soul type beings being a leaner deck. Not running the fourth color, you get room for Wasteland. Wasteland's really strong. You get one ofs like Stifle that can be really punishing. We might see it here. Uh-oh. Oh, Brainstorm.
Yep, you get more creatures and less removal.
So there's trade-offs.
Yeah.
These are both takes on an up the beanstalk build. I like both of these decks a lot in this post-ban meta. But Nick's applying some pressure, some real pressure here. He's got what looks to be a Lorien.
No, he follows up with the Stifle he finds off of the Brainstorm, and Jason protects his fetch land, being able to play the game by pitching a Tameo. So we'll see if Nick is able to really push Jason down into the dirt by countering the counter.
I mean, you're happy to just stifle a Force of Will here most of the time, right? Like, it just took 2 cards out of the hand. It's a mind rot right there.
And Jason gets the basic kind of backed into a corner with being selective with his fetch lands, knowing that a Wasteland has been played, having to keep that in mind for the rest of the game.
And here we are, we just get to like play our Tamios and cantrips like 2 turns behind. Not a good feeling.
One of the real all-stars in this Soul type beings list too is Witherbloom Command. Because having a single wasteland in the graveyard means that any top deck Witherbloom is just more land destruction on top of self-mill and drain or deal with an annoying permanent out of certain decks. It's really good.
You're right. I didn't like this in this matchup because you generally want Wind of the Boom Clan to be doing at least one other useful thing, right? You want there to be a non-creature permanent to blow up, and in this case, it is beans. You can destroy the beans, but like if you can't kill any creatures with it, if you can't like if you don't care about the life drain, you're not generally just trying to get the land back.
So the other secret mode post board, destroying carpet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one because
Yeah.
that really unlocks Jason's mana. That could be a single card that Jason could top deck and totally get him out of this. So Witherbloom being able to blow that up in certain spots could
Here,
also be strong.
here comes Murktide. No white mana in sight. No domain in sight.
We
Tough.
see Nick with a big turn with the Murktide as well as his own carpet, uh, really being in the driver's seat, kind of an inversion of what we saw in game one, with the
Jump
Murktide
attack
about to
cameo.
devour a Tameo. But we see a brainstorm here mid combat in an attempt to save the Tameo from being eaten by the dragon.
You'd probably still make this jump attack like a fair portion of the time anyway. It's not doing much for you as a blocker, and you really need the clue to dig you out of this. But it's really nice that he has the brainstorm to flip this into a planeswalker here.
Yeah, a bit of a reprieve. Hopefully he can find a white source. That's what he's looking for.
Yeah, this combat trick doing a lot of work because on Nick's next turn, it's going to save Jason some life by him losing the Tameo. You know, Murktide being a 5/5 right now, and with the flip and the inevitable plus, still being able to eat the Tameo on the Planeswalker side.
Yeah, but this is one of the big advantages of planeswalkers. Even when they were first released, it was kind of like, oh, this thing is a must answer permanent, and also it just like gains me 6 life to put this into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when healing self was a thing?
Yeah. I mean, we get a lot out of 1 mana these days. That's fire design. This Tameo's just out here putting in all that work.
Amazing. Getting a pass back.
1 island in play. Plenty of options.
So are we thinking we're getting a Savannah off this Misty? Probably. Gonna
Yeah.
wait and see if Nick deploys a Wasteland or Witherbloom.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's Jason's ideal sequence of plays over these next couple turns in order to claw back into this game?
Oof, beans.
Nick
Yeah.
being able
you
to
need-
resolve a beans is really keeping his hand full, being able to
I
have
think
all sorts of
you can
interaction.
take. Yeah, oh, I didn't know Wasteland.
Jason would need to remove the Murktide and hope that Nick doesn't have another threat, and then untap and like play a beans or two of his own. Is how I imagine this game going better for him. I don't know.
Jason
You
does have
know-
the Uro in his graveyard, with the Tameo being the fifth card. So if he's able to get to the mana requirement, he can get it in play. But this is going to be tough with his greedy mana base and facing down the second wasteland of the game.
You might expect Nick to bring in small amounts of graveyard hate, like the one of Ghost Vacuum for Uro as well. That could be another thing that comes up.
It also, you know, it interacts with Mystic Sanctuary. It has some
Yeah.
spots.
It has a couple of spots.
Having to fetch the basic forest is tough, and you're deploying.
Thank you, Jason. Jason resolving his own seeming copy of up the Beanstalk, not being able to see through the glare, and following up with the Misty.
Yep. Still got the clue in play. The beans is out here.
You know, you can take a hit from the Murktide. You can
Yep.
take a couple hits.
Yep.
I think really what you're trying to do, get rid of his Beanstalk. After taking a hit or two, top deck something like Terminus, trigger your own Beanstalk while dealing with the Murktide. That's the solution here, but it's gonna be hard to line up.
Yeah.
Nick using the Carpet of Flowers to get the blue mana to cast this Brainstorm and
Yep.
sculpt his hand a little bit as he continues to apply pressure.
Kind of unfortunate that these guys are playing their cards directly into the glare. But it is what it is. They don't know.
Witherbloom command choosing I
There's the
melt
Witherbloom.
Yeah, gonna go for that beans, get that wasteland, just like I was mentioning.
Tough. He mills another Whistler.
And we see a Life from the Loam and another Wasteland. So
Misty's my hand. Sure.
Witherbloom Command really showing its flexibility and highlighting some of the things that we've talked about in the commentary. Um, Nick, very much in the driver's seat here. We see a Force of Will in his hand, as well as some other cards as he shuffles them around.
Yeah.
Even with the one other basic in Jason's list coming out, that doesn't give you a lot of flexibility or ability to play a lot of the cards that you want to get out there.
You know, the other card that Jason's probably thinking about right now, Wrath of the Skies.
Yeah, that could do a lot of work here. Clean up carpet and beans at the same time. You're not getting Murktide. That's too ambitious. But that's a way forward.
The
No
white,
white mana though.
yeah, the white cost is holding him back. We'll see what he finds off this ponder. Jason's time is dwindling.
And as Taylor mentioned, the Murktide only being a 5/5, giving some flexibility, but the amount of cards that Nick is able to keep in his hand, a Life from the Loam in the Yard with some Wastelands, really keeping Jason's mana base in check as he plays a Tropical Island.
That Murktide can grow though. Life of the Lone leaving the graveyard from Dredge. Any delve spell like Murderous Cut. That another Murktide. That Murktide gets real big real fast. Nothing you can do about it.
Very scary. Here we go. He's going to trigger it. Well, goes off.
There's
So all of a sudden this became a two-turn clock basically. If we dredge it again next turn.
Right. Going for. Oh, we're
With this,
forcing the issue.
yeah. If we have a second wasteland, we can just waste the fetch land and say, "What are you going to do about it?"
Right.
I think we saw Rakshasa's Bargain, that Force of Will we mentioned earlier, and some other interaction. Jason cracking a clue.
Yeah, forcing the issue. He's going to crack.
3 targets.
It does it 1 or 2 times, and then like every other time I play the deck, it's just like.
Maybe I don't really understand what happened there with the waste and the fetch, but we're getting the
So-
back of the life alone.
Yeah, I think we have should have a couple more triggers for the Murktide. Oh, no, that's Instants and Sorcery. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, hitting the Tropical Island, forcing Jason to crack the clue. Yeah, I think this is Jason's hoping that Nick somehow makes a mistake, maybe plays into some kind of interaction that he's able to sneak through.
Yeah, Nick
But
did
having
it
that
all
life
this
over.
game. He, deployed the cheap threat, disrupted the mana, secured his own mana, had a draw engine. This is the recipe. This is what Beans does. And we see Jason, still has a grip. It's not like he hasn't played spells. It's not like he doesn't have cards in hand. It's just not lining up the right way.
There's our second Murktide. Is that lethal?
Oof.
I don't think so, but it's close.
I'll grab a sit
Gonna be a 9/9?
targeting that one.
There's the swords, but surely Nick's ready. It looks like a Force of Will in the hand.
Yeah.
Doing it before all the triggers resolve. Disciplined swords.
It'll be my the calls for.
Beanstalk trigger on the stack, counters on the stack, swords on the stack being represented here.
I think the Murktide that's coming in, that's on the stack, will come in as an 8/8.
Okay.
See Ponder, Witherbloom, Thoughtseize, Brainstorm, Stifle. Yep. And we see the Force pitching Harbinger of the Seas to protect the.
Yeah, second Beanstalk trigger on the stack. Yep.
All my triggers here. Yeah.
Nick played this game really well.
Yeah, tight play by Nick, and should be able to close out very quickly, if not this turn.
1 damage off this turn. Bowmaster's not playable with current mana. Could draw a single card and dredge loam somehow. Actually, that would have been a way to do it. You could have replaced one of your beans draws with a loam dredge. Take him down to 0.
Oh, sorry. Insta.
Not like this is going to matter in any way, shape, or form.
This is for the Rubbins, and Jason packs it in.
Yeah.
There we go. Nick, again, with tight play, really showing off the power and versatility of Sultai Beans in this pseudo mirror of a 3-color deck versus a 4-color deck. trying to leverage the power of these big spells with the draw of Up the Beanstalk. Uh, Great games that we saw, 3 different matchups, but great play all the way through. Got to learn a lot, got to have a lot of fun. Um, what was your guys' favorite play from the 3 rounds?
Let's see. I liked the Orcish Bowmaster stack battle. That was fun for me.
I liked the part where Nick put Vault into play. I'm joking. Yeah, I thought they were all really good games. I was glad to see it. I thought the most interesting part was probably, I don't know. I really like the interplay between Oops and other decks in the format right now. I know everyone kind of hates it, so to speak, but I think the interplay between Fast Combo and Interaction is fun.
Yeah, me too. It's always a good time.
So I like seeing that. And props to Cody for bringing something new.
Yeah, always good to try something out. Local's a great opportunity to take what you've practiced or sleeve up a new deck and give it a try. Sometimes you take the slow route with all sorts of removal spells and cantrips, and sometimes you sleeve up the fastest deck you can and try to win the game immediately.
Yep, and that's the beauty of Legacy. You can do both.
Well,
All right,
that's it.
thanks for the good time, everybody. We'll pass it back to Jason.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, gentlemen. This was excellent. This is concludes our broadcast for Florida Legacy Club. Again, if you're watching the replay on YouTube, check out our link tree in the video comments. And gentlemen, thank you so much for your wonderful commentary. We'll call it here. Everybody have a great night.
Thank you, Jason. Have a good night, everybody.